Welcome to today's episode of Conversations with Karen and Kat. I'm Karen Scott Green.
And I'm Kat Hardrick.
And we are here today with Crystal Smith, the founder of Peace, Peace. Crystal, we are live and welcome.
How are you?
Thank you so much for joining us. I know we've tried to do this a couple of times.
Right.
The time is right. The time is right.
God's planning.
Crystal, so Peace deals with young people and substance misuse. So tell us first off what Peace stands for. What is your mission and what is your why?
So Peace stands for proactively empowering adolescents through change and encouragement. Our why is because we've run into so many youth that are now dealing with substances, their homelessness, and there's so many challenges that our youth experience, but we don't have a lot of services. Our mission is to get to the youth and provide them services before the community sucks them in and they have these negative experiences and they don't have the resources to get back on track to help them, be able to lead a positive life and be able to get the things that they need. So our goal is to just set them up for success and do anything we can to help them along the way.
Praise God. What's the age group that you deal with?
So we work with age like middle school going into high school. So I would say 13 to that 17, 18 age. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we chose that group because it gives us the chance to get them when they're young enough, but not when they're too old. And we can kind of help build that foundation for them to have something solid to work through versus only giving them the things after they've already missed the mark. So we're trying to get in front of it. That was the objective with going with that 13 age.
Being proactive instead of reactive. I know that's right. Let's get them before Karen see them. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so true. And so how did you get started doing this? Because I know you in another life you were in corporate.
Right.
How did you make that shift?
So one of it's so funny. The thing that happened is my sister has always been a DUI instructor. She's always worked in government. She works for Gwinnett County. And so she became a DUI instructor some time ago. And so she said, Crystal, somebody's looking for a teacher. And I was like, okay. And so I became an instructor. So as we were teaching, my mind was running and I was like, listen, this is how much he charges for this and this is what he pays us. So if we did it ourselves, we can make X amount of dollars. So I had this grand idea, right? And it was so funny because my sister said, Crystal, we're not able to open a school. We cannot do that. It's too much overhead. And I was like, whatever, we're doing it anyway. So as I was telling her we were going to do it anyway, so I started I went ahead and I figured out our name. So in our other business, our names are Natasha, Beatrice, and Crystal. So that's where the NBK came from.
Okay. Oh, I was wondering where that was coming from. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's where that part of it came from. But you don't want a really long name, but something that's effective that can describe you. So that's how we got to NBK All Risk Solutions outside of Peace. And in that business, what happened is we started as just a driver services school, the basics, the DUI, the driver improvement, and driver training for students. And as we were doing that, we were noticing that we were seeing a lot of college students in our DUI classes and driver improvement classes. So seeing them there, it was like, how do we reach them before we get there, before they get to
their DUI?
Right. So that's how Peace actually came about, is because in those classes, we started seeing a lot of people. And as they continue to ask for varying services, we added the clinical side of it, where the anger management, shoplifting, 420 classes came into play. We have a family violence program.
My sister for the 420 classes, for those who don't know, the 420 classes deal with
marijuana. So it's a marijuana class that specifically addresses an issue with addiction to marijuana.
Okay.
And then we have a family violence class. It's actually a program. And then my sister and I lead the domestic violence task force as well in Oconee County. We started that again.
Okay. So out in Watkinsville?
Yes, in Watkinsville. Okay. Yeah, because it wasn't active. So we started kind of drumming that up, and we've been leading that initiative for a while, partnering with our partners over in Clark County. So
Okay.
that our businesses kind of lended to each other, and that one business is what drove us coming about with Peace.
Okay.
What drove you all to this space to do this work in the first place?
Well, we are definitely servant leaders. We absolutely want to be able to assist people in the community. We enjoy doing community based work. It's important that we reach our youth and try and find ways to help them and assist them. And when you think back, I know when I was raised, my father and mother gave me a foundation, right? But then there were so many missing pieces as I was growing up. And we think about being financially stable. And how do you get to that part? Because I know as I was growing up, there were some different things that I did repetitively. And it's like, why do you keep doing this?
Right.
So,
Mm.
along with our nonprofit came the financial literacy, teaching them how to manage money, having a food pantry. We actually started working with Safe Place, and we're trying to build that program. That's another part that we have not built out just yet. But if you notice, when you go to like Quick Trip, they have that Safe Place sign outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what that's about is if there's a youth that's homeless, hungry, or ran away, what they can do is go to any location where they see that sign, and they can go in there and get food if they're hungry, and they're safe from anybody, and they're able to also go in there and get any type of assistance they need. They'll get them to some form of shelter so that they can be safe through the night. And then they work with DFACs if they need to and try to find them shelter and anything else that they need. So that's another large part of our nonprofit that we're trying to build, but you have to have those community connections to be able to do that. So we're constantly working on trying to build that part of the nonprofit.
Girl, that is fabulous.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you were talking about the 420 class, the addiction classes,
Mm-hmm.
or that segment, that do you find that do people come willingly to that, or is this their court ordered to come to it?
Everybody that we've seen is court ordered. Now, what I can tell you is that we offer substance abuse treatment, and we've had a few people that have willingly come to the substance abuse treatment classes that we host. And then we've also found that there's people that have self-signed up for anger management
Mhm.
and even for family violence. So those three things people sign themselves up for. But for the 420, not so much. It's always court ordered when we see those people.
I I was, a lot of people don't think that marijuana is addictive,
Yeah.
and they think, hey, I could stop and do what whenever I want to. But I've
Yeah.
seen enough young people who, when you will risk either your job, school, or whatever so that you can smoke. And
Yes.
particularly like if you work in a place where you're going to be tested, or you're dealing with a program and you're going to be tested, and you still smoking anyway, that's an
Yes.
addiction.
Yeah.
That's an addiction. And I've definitely seen, not necessarily just young people, I've seen folks who had things to lose and they
Yes.
still continue to smoke. And I'm like, dude, you got you got X number of time to do with this. You can't stop long
This
enough.
amount of time to get
You can't
together.
stop. Yeah.
We see so many people that go through that cycle that we've seen. It's people that come to our DUI program, and we've seen, and they said, oh, I've taken this class 4 times. Like, they can tell us what they need to do. And I'm thinking, well, when do you stop? Like, what makes you stop? So
Mm.
we deal with people like that all the time, and we find ourselves asking that question, which is, like I said, a lot of the reasons why we got back to the nonprofit, because we want to help people. You would be amazed that we also own a drug testing facility, right?
Okay.
Go ahead.
And we are a Quest approved location. One of the things that we find is that young people coming in to take drug tests, and I'm like, the things that they try to do to beat the test, it's amazing.
Get out of here.
You would just,
Baby. Oh, hiding
Really?
things in their cracks and crevices.
Okay, just give me
yeah.
one. Give me, what do you
Hiding
mean?
hiding things in their cracks and
So
crevices.
here's
Oh,
one for you. And so this one person came in to take a drug test, right? And we always say, take everything out of your pocket, put it in the
Right.
locker, take the key with you and everything, right? So he was trying so hard to beat this test. He came out, the entire front of his shirt was wet. And
Oh
I'm
my.
thinking, oh my God, like, why is your shirt wet? But it's because he had something and you put it down in your clothes. So now when you're trying to take it out, because we tell them you can't flush the toilet, can't turn on water, can't wash your hands. So when we send it off, and we put like a bluing agent in the toilet. So if you try to get that water, it's going to be tinted blue. So they can't even use that, right? And so when we send it off to the lab, because we send it to the lab and it comes back as a negative dilute. So that lets us know that you put something in it. And all we're going to do is tell you, you got to come back and take it observed at this point. So it's kind of like, and some guys will come and one guy came in and he just simply said, I'm going to fail. I've used.
At least he was honest, girl.
Yeah.
You can't be mad at that.
Yeah, but we try to, like, before we put them in treatment, we try to ensure that they're clean going through the program, and we try to do randoms because the goal for us is to actually be able to help you. We don't want you to be in our program just to say we're taking your money. We want to help you as much as possible. And if you're not clean, then we can't help you because you're not listening to the message. We can't deliver any type of real service that's going to be beneficial to you at that point. So a lot of our goal is to be able to truly help you. So if they're under the influence of anything, and people say, how do you know if they're virtual? And you know what they're like when they're sober, right? And then you deal with them if they're under the influence of anything. So you experience both sides of that. So you get to know and understand what they're like. It's one guy came into class and we've seen him clean many a times, but this particular day he was under the influence because he was laying down. He was slurring his speech. You couldn't see him on camera. So it was just different things that he was doing that let us know he was under the influence.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I had my fair share of being around people who are using drugs. And you're absolutely right. You can, when you know their behavior when they're sober, you definitely can tell. And for me, you could tell, I could tell the difference between alcohol, marijuana, and going on up the chain.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that people feel like marijuana is just like easy, like drinking water every day, no big deal. But you do begin to see the behavioral change, whether it's for some people. I mean, I don't know what the math is because it's a lot of people who smoke weed forever, and I see Vietnam vets and stuff, they just, that's what I'm saying. And I'm like, okay, but then I just feel like maybe they have all these other things in these drugs that these young people, what they take in these days is just way too much because the clothing, the way they do their hygiene and keep themselves together is all like different, and we had, who do we have on, Karen? It was talking about the fentanyl, and they have all this stuff laced.
Yes.
The fentanyl
Yep.
Our kids need to be careful that what you think you're getting.
The investigator with Gwinnett DA's office. Name just flew out of my head because
this is serious. So we need to. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing because we need to drive home the message that just leave all that stuff alone. Because one time you might use something, and it may be your very last time.
Yeah.
And you're too young. You got a bright future ahead of you, young people. Just
because weed isn't weed anymore.
No. And I say that all the time. And so you hear people say, well, it's just weed and it grows from the earth. And I'm like, oh no. Because
cocaine grows from the earth, don't it?
Listen, and it does. What they use.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if I smell it 5 cars away, that is not what's grown. Something they have altered that in some kind of way. So you don't even know what's in that. It's chemically altered. You don't know. They're doing something to it to make it stronger and stronger.
Even in those vape pens.
Yes.
We was just listening to that too. The vape pens. And I don't know what they putting in that stuff. And one of the kids, girl, me and my friends went out.
It's totally unregulated.
Huh?
They're totally unregulated.
Oh, that's interesting. But that's why these kids are getting sick.
Yeah.
And they're like, this one kid, I seen this story on this one kid. He was using a vape pen, and it was like his whole face, they had to cut his face or something, where he had some kind of cancer in his mouth, and his mouth was disfigured. And I'm like, what is, and it said that he had been vaping.
Mm.
Yeah,
Kids
it's
are dying.
unregulated, and also, so even if it's just tobacco, right?
Mhm.
They're getting unfiltered tobacco, so they're ingesting unfiltered tobacco. At least they're smoking a cigarette. There's a filter on it. Right?
That's true.
There's no filter. They're just vaping whatever that person put into that vape, into that, into that cartridge. So
Yeah, and
that's scary.
they're looking for stuff that's stronger and stronger, because even the THC oil,
Hmm.
I learned, is that people are now dabbing, is what they call it. So they put it in a dab rig, and it looks very similar to like a bong, but different. And it just kind of intensifies the high, and it's like stronger than, it's like pure THC. It's not even
Mm,
like and they're putting in this thing called a dab rig, and they're using
heard of
it
that.
that way because it's supposed to be stronger and hit you harder. And I'm like, people are just thinking of ways to do
To get
things.
higher and higher.
Yeah.
So
And
go ahead.
these addictions lead to crime too, because
Yes.
like you said, Karen, when you ready to get to that next level where you don't care
Mhm.
about anything, then the next thing you know, you get a gun and a deal goes bad because you're getting ready to try to go buy some, or you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So young people, start paying attention to who you with, because isn't it like guilty by association? I don't know what the law
Yeah.
term is, but you in the car with somebody and they have something they're not
If
supposed
you
to.
have access to it, if you have access, everybody could be charged.
Yep. I tell my
Yeah.
son that all the time when he's driving. I just tell him, he doesn't like to ride with anybody, and
Hmm.
I don't fuss or
Good for
complain
him.
about it, because to me that makes me feel better, because you know
Mhm.
what's in your car. And he
That's right.
doesn't have anybody riding with him. For the most part, if he's driving, it may be one or two of his friends, but he's very conscious and cognizant of
Mhm.
who he allows in his car and whose car he gets in, which
Right.
Good
is
for
hardly
him.
ever anybody's. I just tell him all the time, if you get caught with something and it's in your car, it's yours.
Yep.
You can
Yeah,
only hope that the person that it belongs to takes it, but if they don't, it's yours because it's your car.
baby. A
Mm.
lot of times they don't.
And they're
I
not.
know.
They'll be
They'll
like,
leave
"It ain't
you
mine.
high and
It ain't
dry.
mine." Like
Yeah.
Yep.
you what? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
folks will do that. But getting back to the services that you offer at Peace, um, what? So, for those who are listening, when you go for substance abuse treatment, there are levels, different levels to what may be required, and it's
Right.
called an ACM level, an ASAM, and that's
ASAM. Yes.
ASAM, the ASAM level. And so depending upon what level you need, that you may need a higher level of counseling or some medical intervention. Can
Mm-hmm.
you talk a little bit about the level, the ACM level that Peace offers, and how someone could get those services?
So we are a level 1 clinic.
Okay.
That actually falls under our All Risk Solutions umbrella.
Okay.
But what we do when you're talking about as it relates to Peace is we try to do things, especially for adults, when it involves kids. So that's where we try to make sure that they have food. So we do a food pantry for them, or we do clothing drives to make sure
Mhm.
they have clothing. We do things to try to benefit the family as the adult is going through the process of the treatment to get back on their feet. We refer them out to other resources
Mhm.
if they need some specific type of counseling that we can't offer. We work with two counselors that can offer them therapy on a sliding scale based on
Okay.
income, because sometimes they need that therapeutic
Mhm.
intervention that we can't necessarily give them, because for our services, it's definitely a fine line between giving you a safe space to be able to speak and then
Mhm.
having therapy with you, because our
Okay.
sessions are group sessions. So
Mm-hmm.
we try to make sure that we definitely follow that fine line to be able to give you the service that you need, but we also have to cater to the people in the group and in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have those counseling services that we can refer you to. We try to again get to the kids when they're young. We partnered with Sun Academy through our nonprofit as well to offer camps to talk about it sounds crazy, but we offered a puberty escape room for
Hmm.
adolescents. Yeah, so the young lady that runs it for us, her name is Jasmine Nagorski.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually has the kids to come in, and it's the middle school age kids, but she talks to them about going through puberty. She talks to the little girls about their menstrual cycles that are going to start. She talks to them about their body. She talks to them about healthy relationships. She talks to them about understanding when something isn't right, and feeling the freedom to be able to talk to someone else about it when they think they need assistance. So the puberty escape room, as they're going through and then they're getting through the different levels, she's actually working with them, showing them pictures. It's an interactive camp.
Okay.
And people absolutely love it that have been able to do it with her. And she works for DFACS. And so she has or DHS, I'm sorry. So she has the opportunity to
We
go into,
also say defects. Don't worry about it.
yeah. So she has the opportunity to go into schools and be able to work with the kids one on one and work with the kids as she does classes there. So that's been one of the things that's going, and we're working with her with our services as well.
Okay. So now, as a level one ACM level provider,
Mhm.
how long how long is that for them to complete those classes or
Well,
those sessions?
it just depends. So that is definitely guided by maybe the courts or their probation
Mhm.
officer. It could be a bond condition that they may have to take those. So they could say 12 weeks, they could say
Okay.
24 weeks. Most times you hear 6 to 12. Sometimes you'll hear 12 to 24. It depends on how severe it is and what level of intervention they feel is deemed.
Okay.
If it's like inpatient or they need medical treatment, that's kind of like your level 2.
And
Okay.
how are if someone's not referred by a court and they
Mhm.
decide, okay, I'm ready to tackle this. This is going to be your question, Kat.
Yeah, I know.
They
She do
decide that
always.
they want to tackle this. How do they contact you? What's the fee? Like how would they be able to pay for it? So how would they find out about you?
So currently we don't accept insurance,
Okay.
but if they wanted to contact us, they could always go to our website, which
Okay.
is mbkallresolutions.com. The fee that we do charge an enrollment fee, and then the per class fee is $40. So the
Okay.
enrollment fee, they would pay $95, and then they would start the classes at $40. They'll have a class every week until they complete the program. For some of them that saying they are signing themselves in, we automatically put them in that 6 to 12 window. And what we tell them once they start the program is typically at 9 weeks is when we kind of reassess and try to determine where they are. But
Okay.
before we release anybody from treatment, we always do the drug testing on them to see if they've stayed clean. Because if you have used in that window, we'll be
It
able to
starts the
find out.
clock.
Yep. Yep. It restarts the clock.
Is it inpatient, outpatient? They get to go home. How do you make sure that they don't get high again? Like when you say if they get high and they fail the test, when they get dropped, then like you have no control. How does that process work if they're in your program?
So for us, it's always going to be outpatient, never inpatient. So what
Mm-hmm.
we do is coming into the program, we'll drug test them. We drug test you
Okay.
to ensure that you're clean coming in. And then we let them know that at any time during this treatment window, you can be randomly tested. So we
Mm-hmm.
will give them a random drug test, and to be released to get your paperwork to say that you've completed X amount of weeks, we
Mm-hmm.
also drug test you before we release you. So
Okay.
they know that this random can happen, and then they know that this potentially that they know that they got to be tested to be released. And we try to test them maybe a week or two before they are released, so that if we find it, we go ahead and extend them. Because if we wait till the last one and you
Mm-hmm.
fail, you've already completed. So now we can't
Mm,
hold you accountable for it.
okay.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So uh, now, because I would imagine, um, being out there in Watkinsville and in Clark County, I used to go to court in both of those places.
Yeah.
This
As of
girl from
last
everywhere.
as of last month, I was taking cases in Clark County,
Wow.
and then I went to go work in the local DA's office. But are you one of only a few Black or persons of color who are providing these services?
We are actually one of the only
Whoa.
um,
Okay.
businesses out there that's providing this level of services. And it's interesting because we encounter and work with so many people, but we are definitely the minority.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, and we noticed that in all arenas that we work in. We are a member of the chamber, and we are almost the only minority that's a member at the Chamber of Commerce out there. We go to the Women in Business meeting, and they have this huge fashion show that they do every year, which is really cool. But it's like Barrow County, Oconee County, Jackson County, like all of the chambers coming together. And my sister and I stand out like, like
Whoa.
a
Out of
thumb
3 counties?
in the room. Yeah,
And
and it's probably 4 counties, and my sister and I stand out amongst them all.
as someone who has practiced in Jackson, Barrow, Clark, and Oconee County, I can believe that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yes,
I can believe
So
that.
wait, let's get some context here. I'm rubbing my head for people that can't see me. You talking about 4 counties. I mean, like, I'm in Gwinnett, we in Gwinnett. That's like 1 million people. So how many people are in these counties? Like 10,000? Are they small counties? Like,
So Clark is a fairly decent sized county because it has
yeah,
the university there. So
right?
that's where UGA is. Oconee is not as populated. Jackson, um, probably the most populated part of Jackson might be Cumming.
Okay.
yeah,
Because the other cities are kind of small, like Jefferson,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nickel, is it Nicholson? Um,
Nicholson,
yeah, those are little small little drive
Mhm.
through little
yeah,
towns. They're not even cities.
But that's still
Yeah,
horrible.
it's
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Is
And
yeah.
it?
so,
That's another kind. That's another show. It's another show.
yeah,
Okay, let me come back. Let me come back. How
Well,
can we?
I'm happy that you're in that space because it's needed.
It is.
So because that perspective needs to be placed when that perspective is needed when we're dealing with substance abuse or substance misuse treatment,
Mhm.
right?
yeah,
Because you need folks who can speak the same language, so to speak.
yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
But let me tell you, you would be so surprised how many kids we see. So, like out of UGA, I see so many kids on pre-trial for drugs. Kids coming out of Oconee. Let me give you one extreme that I seen that was amazing to me. When you talk about a minority versus something else,
mhm,
so it was this one kid that I seen. He was a white kid,
Mhm.
and his parents worked for the county, and he um, got caught with marijuana in his book bag.
at
Um,
school.
yes, with the intent to distribute. So he came to see me. We had to do a clinical evaluation on him. So I
Mhm,
completed the clinical evaluation. One of the questions that I always ask is, what was your punishment? What did they give you behind this? Because any kid that I see that comes to me for pretrial, you're going to do some form of treatment because we're trying to get
mhm.
that pre-intervention because we're trying to redirect the behavior early.
Did
So
he get
we're
put out of
trying,
school?
no, well,
Girl,
we get him to alternative school, but that's all he got.
but listen, I'm clutching my pearls. You see me rubbing my face and I'm rocking
Yes.
my body because I already know. Look, I'm doing this.
We're gonna let you tell your story. We digress a lot, but we're gonna let you tell your story.
Girl, I'm rocking it. I'm shaking my head, baby. Because tell
Yeah.
your story.
He got nothing.
And he
He
was
walked
getting
away
ready to
with it.
distribute.
Yeah. So what happened is he had it at school. One of his friends told somebody else. He gave it to another young man. The boy went home and got sick. His parents had to take him to the hospital. When his parents found out he had it, they forced him to tell where he got it from.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when they told, the people went up to the school and they went and searched the young man's locker, got him out of class, and they found it. That was the end of the story.
I just want to say one
All
thing.
I know is if that was Gwinnett,
Baby.
he would have been put out of school.
Yep.
He would have been referred to juvenile court if he was under like 16, 17. He'd been referred to juvenile, but if he was 17 or older, he was going to superior court.
And
So yeah.
and you said he gave the stuff, the drugs, the illegal substances
Yes.
to another human being, and that person, thank God, did not die.
Right.
But I just was listening to, and y'all could go out, listeners, and verify, but the Gwinnett DA let you sell something and somebody die. You going to
Yeah.
okay? So
Nothing
I
happened.
can't even
Actually,
talk right
Austin
now.
Gatson has said she's going to be prosecuting those cases as
Yeah,
murders or
you
manslaughter,
said,
one or the other.
yeah,
And
you know,
that made me sick to my stomach because all I'm thinking about is if that was my kid.
right.
And
Mm,
how do you prevent that from happening if you don't address the behavior? So the only thing that this kid received was the treatment that I put him in. No community service. Because I said to him, I said, "Did you get community service?" He said, "No." I said, "Did you have a fine? Are you on probation?" He said, "No."
oh
And
wow.
so I'm sitting there and I'm just trying to get through in my mind. I'm like, he's never going to learn his lesson. And even through the questions in the evaluation as I was talking to him, he didn't he was showing no level of accountability.
Mm.
Because I was
Mm,
asking him, "Well, what made you do this?" And he would say, my girlfriend that I was talking to, she encouraged me to do this. And even when I asked him, "Where did you get it from?" My girlfriend asked me to make it, and she told somebody. That's how they found out.
mm.
So he showed no level of accountability or anything throughout this clinical evaluation.
And
So I don't know that this behavior is going to even change. Me putting you in this treatment, but it's, I mean, you got no other repercussions behind your behavior.
So
it's
I
not his.
go ahead.
It's not his. Well, he he is responsible for his actions,
Right.
but the way in which it was handled, it was broken by all the adults around.
Yes.
And here it is. You have a young person. Okay, he white. You said he was white, and they already get special treatment for some
Yep.
cases in some places all around the world. And
Yep.
now here it is. You're just driving that back home. My daughter was in jury duty in this county, and a black person had whatever the legal amount is. He had just above that consider you trafficking.
Yep.
Okay, so whatever that small amount is, that little spot that takes you right into trafficking, he
Yep.
has sentenced for trafficking. And you mean to tell me this young man was distributing illegal substances, got caught, and
Yep. That's it.
girl, bye.
That's
The
it.
adults. It's the adults that make this system horrible. And
It's
we have to
criminal.
be consistently fair, consistently respectful. I'm furious.
That was a prosecutorial decision someone made.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a prosecutorial decision.
It was hard for me. Sometimes it's hard for me to listen to some of it because when you think through it and you think about our young black men
Hmm.
in comparison to and what they're subjected to and what they have to deal with, it's kind of hard sometimes to go through the process, but I still have to remain professional. I have to
Yes.
be able to hear you from an unbiased place,
Mhm.
the most unbiased place I can, and make a reasonable decision. And in
Hmm.
my mind, although I know why you may be sitting here in front of me, and the decision that was made for you to be here was totally biased, I have to keep an unbiased mind. And I say to myself often when I make decisions, definitely in our line of work, if I do it to you, would I have done it to this person if they were Black. I often
Yeah.
ask myself that to try to make sure if I wouldn't have done it to you,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can do it to him.
Right. Keeping
It,
that
it
fairness, because that
yeah.
that trauma that made my daughter, she don't want to do jury duty anymore because that young man was
Mm,
sent up. He had the toughest, and the judge said, "I'm using you as an example."
Yep.
And my daughter literally was crying, and because it was her jury duty, and it's traumatizing. And I can't imagine Karen and y'all in this space where you're on the side where you're trying to help people, and Karen, you're sworn by, you took an oath to be fair and equitable and have the highest ethics when you're caring for people and representing them. And it's just unfortunate when you go through this system, you see people who use their position to just dismantle, this democracy that we fighting for. And
Yep.
these kids are the ones that suffering because they don't have to be accountable for their actions. They're just gonna go right back, get recruited. It's just frustrating, man. I'm sorry. Girl, you just put me on a whole nother level. I'm
You see,
listen,
sorry.
that's
you
why
see,
it's so important. Like Kat, you and I have talked about this before. Yeah, it's important to vote for your president. It's much more important to vote
your local
for your elected
officials,
officials
Ooh,
because
they the
find
ones
out what
supposed
your
to be.
DA is doing. Find out what your solicitor general is doing. Find out what your board of commissioners is doing, what your council people are doing, your school board. That's where it matters because that's what's
Yep.
impacting your life on a day-to-day basis.
Every day.
facts. Facts.
Yes,
Facts. Because
yes.
this person family worked for the place. Come
Yeah.
Mm,
on, man.
Yep.
Come
mm.
on
So as a
now.
young man, I
When
can
we go
only,
offline, you're gonna have to tell me more about that. But
yeah,
because
this,
you've named counties, and I know folks in all of them counties that you named.
yeah,
We're
we
gonna have
we
to go. We're
deal
gonna have to go
we deal
offline on
with
that.
we deal with and see so many people in these different counties, and some of the stories I hear, it's like, wow. I mean, we see kids so young, um, from even like when we're just talking about driver services,
Mhm.
man. I had a young lady in my class, you doing 99 miles per hour in a 55.
Ooh, ooh,
Whoa.
Baby, where you going? And
Praise
ooh.
that's
God,
the,
she ain't hurt nobody.
yeah, but when I get in these classes and I'm talking to them, when I have young people like that, those are the questions I ask. Tell me, what were you doing to end up in this class?
Mm.
That's one of the first questions I ask them. And when they tell me, I ask them the questions like, where were you going? What were you doing? You have no reason to be in a rush going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You're 16 years old, 17. I mean, what happened that you felt like you needed to do
So
this?
90,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like you build a great relationship too when you're talking to them. You're giving them an opportunity to engage. And it's not like you're talking at them. You're talking with these young people because just because they're young don't mean that they don't need to be respected. So I
Mhm,
love the fact
mhm.
that you're building that relationship so that you have a positive impact because they come in I'm not listening to you, but you have to earn their respect so that they can pour into you and build that relationship. Do you have any young people kind of come back and say thank you or try to reconnect in the program in any way of any type?
I have had some people that always try to come back and reconnect. So one of the things that we do with our business is whether it's clinical or driver services or our nonprofit, whichever it is, we answer our phone 24/7. It was a kid that came to our DUI class, I think it was, and late one evening he called and he said, "Miss Crystal, I'm in trouble." And I
Mm.
said, "What do you mean you're in trouble?" He said, "I'm in trouble." Well, I know that he had been to prison. He had gotten out of prison. He was using pills. That was his addiction.
Mm.
And he was just really bad off. And so I said, okay. So I'm tapping my husband and I'm like, babe, look, this kid has called me. But as I was trying to get myself together to be able to assist him, he said, my sister is coming. But he felt comfortable enough to reach
To
out and
tell
say, Miss
you.
Crystal,
Yes.
I'm in trouble. And
Well, thank
so I
God.
hate it when I
Amen.
lost contact. And then those that go through our substance abuse treatment program,
Mm.
if it's like somebody really young, I actually try to reach back out to them just to say, hey, or I take down their clean anniversary and
Oh,
everything. And I make sure I
mhm,
send them a message.
mhm.
Congratulations. How are you doing? Are you still doing well? And they always respond. They're always really excited to just know somebody remembered.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this one guy that I like to share with you guys. He was in one of my DUI classes about a month ago, and
Mm-hmm.
I was it was kind of like a heart-wrenching story. He said, "This is the first time that I've ever been home on an Easter Sunday."
Oh,
And I
wow.
said, "What do you mean?" He said, and he's 60 something years old, might I add.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I started using when I was 7 years old." And I said,
Mm,
"What?" I said,
mm.
"Using at 7?" He said, "Well, he said, my parents grew up in the Woodstock era." He said, "So they thought it would be funny to
And
watch
not
me
Woodstock,
hide."
Georgia.
Listen, no, the right. He said he thought my parents thought it would be funny to watch me get high and how I would act. So he said they were giving me drugs from that time.
Oh,
He
my.
said, and then as I got older, he said by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I was using meth, cocaine,
Mm-hmm.
LSD, and all these other drugs. So, as an almost 70-year-old man, he was sitting on Zoom looking at me and he was in tears. He was in a rehab. He had been out of prison for maybe 2 months. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, "This will be the first birthday that I ever had that I was clean. This was
Oh,
my
wow.
first Easter where I was able to see my family and I was clean." He said, "Since the age of 7, this is the first time I can honestly say that I was coherent enough and not under the influence of anything that I understood what was going on around me."
Wow.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow. And
You know,
We'll
and
that's
keep him
he,
my
lifted,
you
strength
we'll
know,
now.
keep him lifted up in prayer for his sobriety, for
That's
that
right.
angels
yeah,
of protection are around him to keep him sober and to
Mm-hmm.
help him deal with the temptations that are going to come on a
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
daily basis, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Surround
he
him with
said he
that
was
support.
afraid to leave sober living. So he's been there, but he was just like afraid to leave. He was trying to
Mm,
make sure he could stay clean. But it's just sometimes the stories that you hear where you don't really people don't realize how they impact the people that are
yeah.
around them,
Around them.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a guy that said that he's been an alcoholic for a very long time, and he said that he was a travel baseball coach. And I was asking him what happened. He said, "I'm supposed to be dead right now." And
Mm.
I said, "What?" And he goes, "2 years ago I was in the hospital and I was in I think he said liver failure, I guess."
Mm-hmm.
And he said they told me in 2 years I'll be dead
Mm,
Mm.
at the most. And so I was like, "Oh wow." But he said he coached travel baseball. He said, but the parents didn't realize they would have alcohol, they would bring alcohol. We would go after the games, we would drink together. He said during the
mm,
games they would have alcohol, so we would be drinking then. He said so they don't realize how they were fueling me, and they
yeah.
never knew that I had an issue because they joined in and did it with me.
Yeah. Because
He
they were
said
always in party mode after the
Yep.
game.
so he
Yeah.
said it was nothing that ever slowed me down that would make me redirect my behavior. And he
Wow.
said, I continued going down that path of destruction. He said, and when he finished my class, a month later would have been a year that he had been clean.
Good.
And
Good.
he was not even 40 years old.
Oh,
Mm.
wow.
He was
Mm.
Wow.
not even 40 years old.
I
Yep.
Yeah,
I
that's why
do
it's so
I
important.
go ahead, Kat.
That's why it's just so important that you surround yourself, if you can, by people who are clean and living a different lifestyle than that. And I've also found it difficult that when you do admit that you have an addiction, you have people who will tell you, "Oh no, you don't smoke. You don't have no addiction to smoking, or you don't have an addiction to XYZ." And then you got to think about it and say, "Well, of course you ain't gonna say that. You the person getting high with me, you
Right?
know."
Yeah.
Right?
They
Or
minimize the issue.
you have to also be wary of the person. Say, for instance, if pills is your issue, and then you're with somebody and they're like, "Well, you could drink, can't you?"
Right.
They're trying to
Right,
get you to do
right.
something different, but it's still a substance, something to take you out of your consciousness
Sobriety.
of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Yep.
I did want to give out for to the listeners who will hear this and are not watching the video. I do want to give out the numbers to Crystal Smith and for NBK All Risk Solutions. The phone number to the office is 706-310-4030. And the 24-hour mobile number that she was referring to, where you guys could reach her or someone on her staff, is 404-276-1696. You also can go to their website at nbkallrisksolutions.com, and that's for NBK All Solutions Inc. Um, so I wanted to make sure that we got that information out there, and we'll also, I'll also go back in and edit so that this information can be posted because we're streaming live. Mm-hmm. So as I go into the comment section, I will make sure that that information is also entered there as well, so that folks can contact you if they have questions or if they in need of your services.
Mm-hmm. Can they text that mobile number or just phone call? Can they text?
They can text either of those numbers and we'll get it. So the 706-310-4030, we'll answer that one 24/7, as well as the mobile number. And if they text either of them, we'll get those as well, because you can text the business line as well as call it.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. I know a lot of people don't like to talk. These young people, they text a lot. So we want to let them know that you definitely can text that number and get a response as well.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest reasons why we made sure people can text in to that main business number, because we know that the younger you are, the least likely you are going to want to necessarily talk to someone, and they like to text. So if they text it, we'll see it. We see them 24/7 as well.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. That is really
Praise
good.
God, girl. You know, I do want to ask you, like we ask all our guests, we are real big on mental wellness. And in the space in where you work and the community in which you serve, how do you protect your mental wellness? What's your go-to routine that keeps you at a balance so you can continue to deliver the great services that you do?
So let me just tell you, I'd have to be totally honest. For a while, I was in a bad place with my mental health. It was, you don't realize how taxing what you do is on your own mental stability and how much you take on from other people, right? You don't trying to deal with your family and what you have going on, the energy you take on from other people on the services that you deliver. When you walk away and you're worried and concerned, like, dang, you don't think about, like, I hope they don't go out and use, or I hope they're safe, or their kids are well. So what I did was I had to come to self-realization for me to say I needed help. So I went back to therapy, and I actually go see a therapist, because that was one of the hardest things for me to have, because somewhere along the way I kind of lost that balance, because I still work in corporate America and having my family and then delivering these types of services is so taxing. And one of the newest initiatives that I've taken on is an accompaniment advocate. So we do accompaniment for rape victims.
Okay.
So that can be a really taxing job, because you can be a small child or an adult. So it's kind of volunteer. So it's kind of, you work with all types of people. And even when you're seeing people on the domestic violence side to the accompaniment advocate, it gets really, really taxing on your mental, especially when you're
absolutely, because you're internalizing those stories.
And
that trauma.
So I started going back to therapy, and that's been the best thing that I could have ever done for self.
Congratulations.
Yeah, but it's definitely some self-realization, because you have to wonder. I used to say, am I losing my mind? And am I crazy because of you? I feel like you ask yourself those questions, because it's like, you help so many people, you start to wonder, do I need help? And you know, sometimes it's kind of hard to give that to somebody else, and it's kind of hard to admit that you need that help. But I can tell you that was one of the best things that I did, is just realize that you have to talk to somebody besides talking to your family or talking to, you need somebody that's going to hear you.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
licensed professional that's
Yes.
trained to listen to those keywords and can give you the tools that you need to
Yes.
navigate that space so
Yes.
you can walk the path of
Yeah.
greatness that you deserve to walk down. So I applaud you.
Yes.
This is what this space is about.
Absolutely.
Help liberate and empower people to do just what you did. And I just want to amplify. I wish we had some balloons or something, girl. Bring it down, fireworks, honey, because that's what that's about, boo.
I
You
need to
Yeah.
get a horn so we can
yeah, no, since we can't, we cheering. Rah, 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 congratulations,
Right.
girl. That's
Right.
what it's
Yeah.
about. Yes, I
Right.
applaud you, and I pray that
Yes.
others follow the same suit. I'm in therapy. I'm proud to say that I'm in therapy. It took me double digits to get here,
Yeah.
and I applaud any and everyone, and encourage many people to do that, and even our young people. It
Yeah.
is okay. Hold your head up high and say it proudly. Just like you stand in line to get those video games and those gym shoes, you be
Yep.
proud about getting therapy equally or even greater.
Yeah.
Period. That's my soapbox.
You have to learn to want to help
Yeah.
yourself. It's hard, and sometimes like I said, it was something that was very, very difficult to me, but
Mhm.
it was very helpful in the end. It's actually one of the best things that I did, but it was hard for me to say, you know what, you need to talk to somebody, because I
Yeah.
was talking to myself every day, and I was like, yeah, I ain't gonna make it.
Well, we are happy for you that
Yes.
Yeah,
you decided to put your own mental health first. We
yeah,
talk a lot about that on this show. And but once again, I want to thank you so much for sharing this space with us
Yes.
and talking to us about peace and NBK All Risk Solutions and the services that you provide. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Conversations with Karen and Kat.
Well,
yeah.
we are impacting the world one conversation at a time.